Alrighty. And we're good. Welcome back, everybody, to Tiny Bunny. Of course, we're going to be continuing where we left off on episode 3. On N, the wolf's grave fur will stand. The warm farewells Romka and Byasha shouted at the back of fleeing Semyon echoed inside my mind. Was Romka serious about his threats? Would he chase his former friend deep into the forest and then what? Kill him? Just like that? No. That can't be right. I hurriedly rubbed my glasses. The glasses. Semyon was clutching them in his fist while trying to escape the barrage of kicks and slaps from his friends. Former friends by now. And in just a couple of hours, this lost item was lying on the ledge of my window. It's hard to imagine that Sinyoma suddenly got guilty conscious and returned my glasses in such a strange way. I was shocked but kept walking towards the classroom, accompanied by nasty whispers all around me. The photo still stood before my eyes. Semyon has gone missing. Semyon is gone. His fat fingers will never get to my throat. His signet ring won't smash into my chin. He'll never humiliate me again. Wasn't that what I wished for? On the other hand, do I really wish Semyon to become a murky stain on the notice board? He was still someone's son or grandson, and he went through the same struggles as me. Did I really wish for my unseen companion to dispatch him in such a brutal fashion? I didn't know the answer. Or I was just scared of it. Nonetheless, school still had something nice about it. Polina, the girl with the violin, was walking like a mountain spring, like well water that you gulp down, pressing your lips against the zinc outer ring of a bucket, and can't ever get enough. What if I make her one of the characters in the story I'll draw? The protagonist will save her from terrifying monsters. As soon as I thought of monsters, a bunch of classmates slid down the rails, smirking like the xenomorphs from the Alien. I immediately felt larva of fear writhe in my stomach. I didn't want to cross paths with Romka and Byasha after what happened yesterday, especially since Semyon suddenly went missing. I entered the classroom and went toward the last row. All the clatter suddenly died down, so I walked there in complete silence. It felt like my classmates pushed and poked me with their stares. They carefully observed my every move. I stared at the desk with a huge pile of library textbooks on top, my fists clenched. I felt like I was the one who disappeared in that snowy forest, and my desk was finally used for something worthwhile. Semyon's empty chair stood in front of me. The chair that once belonged to Vova gathered dust somewhere in another classroom. Gotta quickly do something real quick. portraits of classical writers, my eyes stopped on Essene's photo. Last year I was tasked with learning any poem, and Dad suggested I learn one about the dog Jim, written by Essene. I don't remember all the stanzas by now, but the last one was somehow deeply ingrained in my memory. I'm sure she'll come here, in my absence. Please catch her eye, go kiss her hand for me. For all my real or fancied errors, asking forgiveness of her in humility. An old cheap side projector. I call this model a tank because it looked like one. There was a time when I had a lot of cool fairy tales that I used to watch with Dad in complete darkness. I remember a little raccoon and one who sits in the pond, Kipling's, Mowgli, and many others. I was immediately swept away by the memory of the projector's hum, its hot casing of its bright rays hitting the wall, turning it into a screen. It's a pity that the school slides were mostly about minerals and PSAs. Every boy my age knew I had something like this in his arsenal. Powder firecrackers that blow up with a very loud sound, especially inside an archway. It is said that they're produced in China and that a single one of them can blow your fingers off if you light it up and clutch it in your hand, especially the Black Corsair type. They won't be enough to blow up plastic soldiers, but when it comes to stuff made of plaster, they should work. After a moment of hesitation, I sat down at Bobrin's desk, the place where I was supposed to be assigned by Lilia Pavlovna at first. I'm butchering these names, I know. The chatter resumed after someone just unpaused the movie. Da-da-da. Content. Kaya snuck a cunning glance at me, then leaned into her neighbor and whispered something. Girls from the second row also leaned in. She shared something with them, too. Whispers, nods. I kept catching her stare on myself. Her neighbor stared too. The whole class was watching me. It was like they felt the need to watch me because they were searching for traces of blood on my fingers. I wanted to defend myself and shout, "Guys, listen, I'm innocent." Romka gave me a heavy, worried look. He was probably as stunned by Semyon's disappearance as everyone else. Then he directed his stare straight at my face. It felt like he was about to point his finger at me and shout at the top of his lungs, "Everyone look, Bobrin snatched his glasses yesterday, and now he has them back. Murderer." But he remained silent, as there was nothing special at all about my glasses. I may be going mad, but I think Romka knows something. He knows something, but he won't tell me what. But it was also possible he didn't care at all, just like everyone else. Then Romka shifted his eyebrows in suspicion and stared at Kaya, as if informing her that he didn't believe a word she said. I wanted to believe that Romka would take my side. And Biasha, who sat sprawled in his chair with his chin pressed against the table too. But they were silent. A terrifying thought flashed into my mind. Those who could easily betray me and push me off the cliff. Just like they did with Semyon. As if looking for protection, I clutched the ruler until my hand hurt. The metal ruler fell out of my weak fingers. It hit the floor with a jingle that made the other kids shudder. Kaya bit her tongue and squirmed nervously. Chairs scraped against the floor. My classmates moved away from me, closer to the exit, towards the teacher's desk. I was not the only one to catch the wind of that change. Rumka and Biasha looked around and winced in contempt. It's good that they were clearly on my side. I gulped. I imagined Semyon on a snowy blanket with a... Wait. Why can I not read? I imagined Sioma on a snowy blanket. His face, white like a fish belly, split down the middle by the crevice of his mouth, snowflakes falling on his glassy eyes and filling up his throat. See, I could almost hear his condescending tone. It's all your fault. Of course, Semyon did me a favor by disappearing. Thanks to him, my classmates now stared at me in awe. But that was only one side of the coin. What if I'll have to repay that favor soon? The door creaked. Polina entered the classroom. I straightened up into her so she wouldn't see me looking like a scared critter. Polina found me with her eyes, gave me a short nod, and went to her seat. Karya rushed to her neighbors again, like a lab rat that saw a treat, and started whispering, switching her gaze between me and Polina. Messages on pieces of paper started jumping around the classroom. The ringer's trill announced the start of class. Lilia Palvona went to her desk, followed by a policeman in a uniform. It was the man that visited us recently, tall, and his stare was so sharp you could get cut on it. The class livened up. Talking to a policeman was way better than studying. I, on the other hand, was ready to sit through hundreds of hours of Russian literature just to escape the lieutenant's oppressive stare. His brown eyes felt around the classroom, looking for me. Hair stood on the back of my neck, and an icicle had lodged in my gut. Her sly stare was directed at me. Tikhonov stepped in between the rows of the desk and started walking at an excruciatingly slow pace, brushing his fingers against the chairs he passed by. Some of the students almost broke their necks following his movements. That's how a crowd of commoners would gleefully anticipate a public execution in the Middle Ages. And he just walked, getting closer and closer to me. I gritted my teeth to stop myself from screaming. Calm down. Breathe. You didn't kill or kidnap anyone. He already knew the answer to his question, but the policeman still asked in a stern voice. My muscles turned to stone. I got up, unglued myself from the chair. I felt like I could hear all my joints creaking in the process. I only wished that Polina wouldn't turn around and see the grimace of horror on my face. If only I could be somewhere far away, in the forest, digging myself into a snow pile, rolling up into a ball there. The officer stared at me as if he was about to lock a pair of handcuffs on my wrist. I wonder how cold these bracelets are going to the touch. I imagined myself getting jailed and put into a juvenile detention center where tens of Semyons would constantly harass me. Only then I noticed a file that said case number in his hand. It had a gray cover made from rough carton. It flopped onto the desk like a guillotine blade that slid down on someone's neck. With a measured motion, Tikhonov opened the file, still studying me with his gaze. I caught a glimpse of documents and photos. They showed prints on the snow. They looked like animal prints. I turned red. You ugly bitch. I wanted to sink my teeth into Katya's face and chew out her cheek. Instead, I replied with the calmest voice I could muster. Getting some water, my throat's dry. I waved my hand indecisively. Tikhonov looked at my fist and he was surprised that I managed to hit the big kid from the photo. Surprisingly, Lilia Palovna came to my rescue. The officer replied with a meaningful nod and fished out a notebook out of the file. I averted my gaze. It was a math notebook with my name on it. My classmates devoured me greedily with their eyes. I felt like even the writers on the portraits squinted at me in suspicion. I started blinking in bewilderment. Romka ransacked my school bag. This notebook probably just got lost somewhere in the bushes. The lieutenant knew about the school brawl, but he was aware of the fight in the forest clearing. I had witnesses that could testify to Semyon and I were walking in different directions after that. I looked towards the boys, hopeful. Romka, who sat behind Tico, put a finger to his lips. And when the officer quickly turned around, he pretended to pick his nose. I deciphered his signal. Boys like Romka would probably say something like snitches get stitches in a situation like this. I frantically fixed my glasses. Wait, Semyon took them away yesterday, but now they're... easily, just like me producing this half-truth. Before I could realize whether it was a genuine piece of advice or a veiled threat, the teacher said, Romka swayed in his chair and gave me a thumbs up. Attaboy. Good keeping your trap shut. I nodded, even though I didn't feel a shred of pride from his praise. After all, he was the one who threw my notebooks and textbooks into the snow. He was the one ordering Semyon despite changing his allegiance later. A stockade of arms rose from the desks. The kids shouted over each other, swarming the policemen with questions. In an attempt to calm down that chorus, he moved towards the blackboard. The gray file was left lying in front of me. I stared at it, my breathing so ragged that it might have looked like someone who just ran a 100-meter sprint. Beads of sweat rolled down my neck. Back. Well, same thing. I looked around the classroom. My classmates were catching officers' every word. Only Romka was saying something to Biasha. Lilia Pavlovna was staring into the window, fighting back yawns. Turn around. Nobody paid me any mind, so I slowly opened the file. My fingers started sifting through the documents. Ksenia Talaleva, 6 years old, left her home sometime in December. Identifying features. Okay. My heart almost jumped out from the ribcage. A round-faced girl no older than Olya smiled at me from the photo. The first victim of a serial killer. The first child to disappear in the forest without a trace. I turned another page. Vladimir Matyukin, 10 years old. Vova was the second. His mitten hanging from the branch, his name called out by desperate adults and repeatedly by the sneering echo. Lilia Pavlovna coughed, trying to calm down the rowdy students. I yanked my hand away and the file closed. The officer turned his back to the class and started writing on the blackboard with a piece of chalk, producing nasty screeching sounds. The officer started squeaking with a piece of chalk again, and I, after making sure nobody was watching me, opened the file and took out photos that were hidden at the bottom. They reminded me of snapshots from that strange TV report, only instead of crosses on a white background there were crooked rowan trees. The artery-like roots, stumps and charred pines cut down by lightning. And snow, lots of snow. Then, a black building that immediately gave me chills, yet it wasn't a crypt. It was a garage. A box made from steel, standing amidst the thicket, judging by the trees all around it. Those black gates were almost sucking me in. I already encountered the metal container that travels around the local area. Just yesterday, in fact. First, Romka told me about it. He said that the black garage was the culprit behind children going missing, as if it was a living being. And then I met with this abyss, colored building face to face in the middle of the thicket. And the fox girl told me that Vova was hiding there. My fingers trembled and the photo glided through the air back into the file. Thank God it landed upside down. The steel box was just too unsettling to look at. There was also a plastic bag at the bottom of the file, the type used to store evidence. I opened it, and inside it was a severed finger. I blinked and the mirage dissolved. I couldn't see a cut-off bloody part. There was only a signet ring inside. Stunned by that fleeting hallucination, I almost felt like I was transported back to the forest and heard Semyon's words. The ring was giving off a faint glow on top of my palm. I panicked and squeezed the evidence in my fist, trying to assure myself it was real. I clanged my teeth from surprise, pushed myself into the back of my chair, blinking in bewilderment. The officer silently gathered the documents and gave me a stern look. I tried my best to squeeze out an apology and return the ring. But I only managed to hold out a clenched fist with the ring inside, and started rumbling like Dad's car engine when it started cold. I went toward the blackboard without looking back while I was still clenching the stolen piece of evidence, thinking about Semyon, a boy that was already most likely dead. Yeah, right, a thought flashed through my mind. Dig through enough ditches and maybe you'll be able to piece them together. Like Legos. My thoughts turned evil for some reason. I couldn't control them. I tried to switch to the lieutenant's speech about suspicious individuals. What if I saw the killer before? What if I was a hair's breadth away? Oh, I misspelled breath. What if I was a hair's breadth away from them? Suspicious people. How suspicious was the fox girl that wandered in the darkness? A riddle that always appeared out of nowhere and dissolved into thin air with her riddles and rhymes. Could she really harm the hulking Semyon? Should I tell the officer about her? What if lives of other kids depend on this? Of the cute Kiesinia and Vova too. What if I get mocked for speaking out? What if they'll start whispering behind my back, or what's even worse, think that I'm insane? Romka gave me a stern look over the shoulder. I doubt someone like him would approve of cooperating with the police. Katya's braid dangled nervously behind a delinquent sitting in front of me. My hand was glued to the desk. Tikhonov was saying goodbye to Lilia Pavlovna. He was about to leave. It'll be too late soon. It's gonna seem like he's wasting his time. Stay silent. No way. I've had enough of humiliation. I'll keep my head down like a bunny. I lock my fingers and zip my mouth. 1 second, let me get some water. Much better. The bell rang. Lilia Pavlovna passed by without looking my way. Polina left after her. My classmates went silent at the same time as someone muted the sound on the TV. They followed me with their eyes the whole time I was passing between the rows. Excuse me. Judgmental looks. I felt like I was in the scopes of mini sniper rifles. I squeezed through the barricade, made a desk looking for Polina. Excuse me. But instead I stumbled into my new buddies. Romka and Biasha were waiting for me at the notice board. Rumka's stern look made me uncomfortable, so I nodded. Rumka lowered his voice and looked around the corridor in suspicion. The other kids were stealing glances at us, whispering. Biasha shuddered. Fucking Biasha. Andrei Chikatilo, a Soviet serial killer and cannibal. He sexually assaulted and killed at least 43 people, mostly women and children, who was later deemed legally sane and sentenced to death by firing squad. Huh. Happy ending. Biasha whistled. I looked around like a thief and carefully took out the stolen ring. Roma wasn't impressed by that information. He just nodded, looking grim. Biasha looked like he was punched in the gut. He staggered and hid his face in his hands. Rumka rolled his eyes and swore. The beer-yet kid started shaking all over as if he was thrown outside naked in the middle of winter, and every new question was like a bucket of cold water on top of that. Rumka shielded his friend with his chest, clearly upset by my interrogation. Rumka leaned in like we were some sort of co-conspirators. Winston discussed as if reluctant to relieve the memory, and spoke in a whisper. Oh, you know, the usual stuff. Biasha wrapped his hands around his head and let out a lengthy bleat. Biasha, who suddenly woke up from his shock, mumbled. He looked at me with an adult gaze and nodded. His eyes were full of worry and sadness. Scared shitless of me? Well, I still couldn't wrap all that around my head. Their attitudes softened me up and I agreed on the spot. I followed Rumka and Biasha through the twilight corridors of our school, savoring my newfound brazeness. We walked pompously like heroes of some criminal drama, as if the three of us had access to some knowledge hidden from everyone else. I'm not sure I would have gone with them if they told me the goal of our campaign was. We hid in the darkness near the school gym, and my companions started rubbing their knuckles, watching boys leave the dressing room. Finally, Biasha pointed at someone inside the crowd. Romka smiled dangerously and proclaimed in a low voice, I stood at the corner, filled with conflicting feelings and thoughts. In a cul-de-sac behind me, Rumka was having a back and forth with some fifth grader. The boy was protesting on the verge of tears, but Rumka stood his ground, spewing countless obscenities at him, with Biasha occasionally adding a couple of words of his own. Would Dad praise me for involving myself with this? My new friends came out of the cul-de-sac. A light bulb illuminated the camera in Rumka's hand. Rumka shook the black electronics marvel with a retractable flash, disinterested. Checking something real quick. There we go. I felt bad for that boy, but all the negative thoughts disappeared when I looked at the treasured camera. I could clearly imagine how happy Oya would be with this Polaroid. I imagined myself taking pictures of my sisters, dad, and mom. The faces of my family would gradually appear on the hard paper as if emerging from the dissolving mist. I'd take pictures of Polina too that way. I'd be able to get her photo for myself. I'd keep it in my desk under lock and key. Alright, Anton. Roma measured me with a sharp glare, turning into the Rumka I'd met yesterday. The callous leader of a carnivorous pack. For some reason, as soon as he mentioned a game, I remembered Elisa. I looked at the Polaroid. Biasha snickered into his fist. Roma has his fucking priorities straight, Biasha doesn't. Romka stared at me from above. I slowly turned the pockets of my pants inside out in vain hopes of salvaging at least some change from my lunch money. Something rustled in my pocket. I fished out the Mercedes-Benz insert I got thanks to Elisa. I guess I shoved it there without thinking when it flew out of my school bag with all the notebooks. Biasha's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as soon as I brought the card's picture closer, but Rumka didn't move a muscle. Rumka spit on the ground and slapped Biasha over the back of the head. Just like I suspected, the automobile was a valuable addition to every turbo gum collector. In a blink of an eye, a greasy deck of almost likely marked cards appeared in Vyashka's hand, and Rumka masterfully swung his butterfly knife in front of my nose. I had no desire to play by their rules. Okay. I am gonna save this real quick. Rock. Rock. As sad as I was to be left with nothing in the end, I held out an answer to the boys. Dad always said that a card dead is sacred, and it stood there even without the cards. Rumka crossed his hands on his chest while smirking and eyeing his prize, and then spoke after looking up at me. My friends let out another hyena-like laugh, but then Rumka lifted his fist with a serious look in his eyes. He was raring to go on. Negative. I want the Polaroid. Let's see scissors first. Alright, I'll save right here. Fuck you, paper. Yeah. Paper. I should have gone scissors. He's gonna go scissors next. Scissors! Bitch. Wash. Scissors. Hey, we won. This is the second try. I looked at my opponent with suspicion. Rumka mumbled something under his breath. He probably refused to play by the rules, and I'll be left with nothing. Rumka reluctantly gave up. I weighed the Polaroid on my palms and realized that I was smirking like a true winner. It's been 7 days since the lieutenant visited our class. At first glance, everything was still the same. The forest still held out its gnarly claws toward the village, and the wind whipped up white flags weaved from powdery snow every night. When my parents argued in the other room, I would turn up the TV's volume to silence their muffled voices and sit close to Oya. Vova's and Semyon's photos were still 2 black spots on the nose board, and round-faced Senya hasn't returned home too. But something did change. I could see how different the looks of my classmates were. They made my pockets bulge with gifted apples. Their animosity was gone. School wasn't scary anymore. But most importantly, a shadow slid across my desk, leaving behind a mysterious note. I glanced into space between the rows, but the messenger was already nowhere to be found. Who sent me this note? What could this carefully ripped out, neatly folded piece of paper be hiding from me? More threats and humiliation, or... I took the piece of paper and carefully inhaled the wafting aroma. Blackberry. Inside was a message in beautiful handwriting. I'm waiting at a dead end near the dressing room. Come alone. Drunk on that sudden call, I immediately started walking, looking over my shoulder from time to time, making sure nobody is following me. I didn't even notice how I was almost broke into a run and jumped around the corner. As soon as I did that, I rammed into somebody inside the dark nook. Like a magic bird, a green notebook glided to my feet. Polina puffed her cheeks in exaggerated anger. I fixed my glasses. My nearsightedness wasn't that embarrassing anymore. I bent down and picked up the notebook. Polina studied me with her eyes and clicked her tongue. I blinked in bewilderment. Of course, some of the things Polina said went completely over my head. But I couldn't stop looking at her smile, like a breeze in May, and her eyes deep in blue. Polina gasped and frowned, which made her look even more beautiful. I tensed up, worried that she was making fun of me. Polina shook her head. Katya walked past us with her trademark frosty glare. We dove into the shadows, trying to escape it. Polina flashed a sly smile. I giggled, covering my mouth. Katya didn't hear our whispers, but she suddenly glanced over her shoulder, clearly annoyed. A moment later, she sighed and went her way. I remembered about the notebook I was still clutching in my hand. I turned it in my hands. Instead of a subject name, the front side had the name of the owner in 2 words, friends only. I lied that I had. In reality, girl classmates from my previous school had never asked me to fill out their questionnaires. It was quite upsetting. I mean, it was a girl hobby. You just answer a set of standard questions about your favorite actors and colors. but entrusting someone with such a notebook was the sign of friendship. And maybe of something even more, something I had only vague idea about. My heartbeat quickened. Polina giggled. She reached for the notebook, playing with me. I tossed my finding into my free hand. Polina tried to intercept my move. Her hair briefly touched my face, tickling my nose with its silky locks. I sensed an aroma that immediately filled the whole world, fragrant, alluring, lively. If only I could picture it, steal it for myself. I felt dizzy, but I gathered myself and spoke in a voice reminiscent of Lieutenant Tikhonov. Polina covered her mouth, rounded in fake horror. Polina burst out laughing and pressed herself against my chest, showering me with the aroma of her hair and her milky skin that looked almost transparent, with tiny threads of veins running under it. Her whisper was hot, like a piece of butter sizzling on a pan. Took out the notebook during class, with utmost care as if it was some sort of fragile treasure. Skimmed through it, reading into other people's preferences. I was quite surprised to discover Rumka's jerky handwriting inside. His letters bulged out of the cells as if embarrassed by their shapelessness. Fearsome Rumka found time for something so silly. I chuckled into my fist after I found out that Rumka's favorite cartoon is not even Darkwing Duck, but DuckTales. Somewhere in the distance, a teacher was reciting pieces of Andrew's Snapper. I paid them no mind. Polina's page was decorated with flower drawings and clippings from the Cool Girl magazine. Her favorite musician is Schubert. Her best friend is her grandpa. Her hobby is not violin like I expected, but a much more mysterious listening. Such a mundane process really... can it... Englishness escapes me. Can such a mundane process really be someone's hobby? I looked at Polina over the heads of other students. She was focused on taking notes. I flipped the pages until I found a blank one and armed myself with a pen. Anton Petrov, Class 6B. I took a long time to decide on my favorite musician until a trendy pop band, Carman, came to mind, with the cool dancers in their music videos. Favorite holiday? This one's easy. New Year's. My hobby is drawing. My dream? Going to Disneyland, I guess. My hero? My hand moved on its own, writing, duh. I stopped on those two letters. What if those who read this ask me find my answer laughable and stupid? After thinking a bit, I decided that not everything should be disclosed on paper. That's how da turned into Spider-Man. The spelling was wrong, but who cares? Your biggest fear, huh? I immediately wrote losing a person who's dear to me. your phone number. No secret here, 30395. Your favorite cartoon, Transformers. Your best friend. I hesitated, gnawing at the pen's cap. I remembered Elisa, gliding behind the trees, laughing enthusiastically from the shadows. I hadn't seen her in a week, and it even made me worried. After all, she was the one who stopped the colossus of a monster that wandered the forest in the night from tearing me to bits. I mentioned a masked girl to Rumka and Biasha before, but they just gave me weird looks. I wonder what she's up to right now. Your best friend, I read the question out loud. It was easy, but at the same time very important. My answer consisted of 3 letters, and I filled them in the cells with care. You. You, I repeated when running out of the school. Refreshing frosty air made my cheeks turn beet red. It was bright outside, and the sun looked like a whole egg yolk. The road looked as if it was silvered. The snow sparkled under the sunlight. I smiled, squinting from the blinding whiteness. There was also something magical in my chest that beckoned to me, because friendship can grow into something bigger. Yeah, fucking right. I swallowed my smile and turned red. Biasha was shuffling his feet in the middle of the yard, his boots restless on the ice. I rummaged through my memory and blurted out a random joke I heard today in the cafeteria. Petrosian, a Soviet and Russian stand-up comic, colloquially known as the king of humorous remakes and dad jokes. He walked towards the school's corner without waiting for me. I hesitantly tagged along. I felt chills run over all. Why is English so complicated? I felt chills run all over my body. I didn't like the sound of that. Small business. Those words, accompanied by spitting, normally hid very dark deeds underneath them. Strangers that used to call our old apartments used to say, "Get your old man, we have small business to discuss." Biasha turned around. He looked like an astronaut in his tight hood. If I were to imagine him as a sound, he'd be a deafening whistle, a signal given by someone who stands watch. My knees started shaking as soon as I thought that I was about to be dragged into something shady. Images flashed before my eyes. Tikhonov's strict gaze as he shuts the prison cell door on me. My father hitting the bars in anger, Mom and Oya crying nearby. To my demise, there was nobody at the backyard, apart from the grim-faced Rumka. He stood there, his feet wide apart, with his right hand hidden behind his back. He must be holding a knife, the steel butterfly of death that lies towards a person's heartbeat. Rumka's dry lips were tightly pursed as he kept shooting glances at me as he looked around. What's going on? It was as if Rumka read and announced my thoughts. Biasha's voice sounded nasty, snarky. Uh-oh. Baby, is he talking to me? I was so bewildered I wasn't able to squeeze out a single sound in reply. I just watched a bizarre scene played out in front of me by my new problematic friends. I was trying to digest what I just heard. Did Biasha really call Rumka a shithead? Is he out of his mind? Biasha ignored my weak protest, then stepped towards Roma, swung at him in a weird, comical manner. Rumka blocked the punch with his free hand, keeping his right hand behind his back. Even actors in Indian films that my mom loves fight more convincingly. Biasha started weeping, even though I hadn't seen Rumka hitting him. No one said the voice acting in this was spot on, but at the same time they're children, so I give it a pass. Roma kicked him in the knee and Biasha fell to the ground, sighing and moaning. And I started at the approaching Rumka without blinking. His elbow was twitching and his hand crawled from behind his back. I grew roots into the asphalt. A blade will shine in front of me. Here it comes. Rumka yanked his hand from behind his back. My teeth chattered from fear. A bouquet of snowdrops that appeared out of nowhere in the freezing weather swayed in front of my face. What's this? Flowers? Biasha. Words finally returned to me. Rumka snorted, blowing snowflakes off the flowers. I don't know who the other two people watching this are, but I swear, this is a horror visual novel. It might not seem like it right now, but I swear to God it is. Biasha stood up and brushed himself off. Biasha grumbled, upset. I'm not a shithead. I felt relieved. Nothing criminal, just a scene for a girl. Roma livened up. I can't take him seriously. Biasha started dragging his feet along the schoolyard, grimacing. went towards Rumka, fighting an urge to smile. He hid his hand again and put on a stern expression, a 5-star actor. Oh. And I tried. I threw a punch in the direction of my friend. My knuckles barely grazed his leather coat, and Rumka suddenly fell. Not for my laughable poke, but because he slipped on ice. He plopped on his back with his full weight, without a chance to get his hand out of the way. Petals from the squash flowers were left in the snow. I rushed to help. Roma was carefully working his wrist. Romko was already laughing as he got up and gathered the flowers. Rumka shook his head. I stumbled mid-word. A switch flipped in my head. It all made sense now. I remembered Rumka constantly sneaking glances at Polina. I remembered his scrawly handwriting in the questionnaire. Why didn't I study it more in depth? I felt like somebody hit me over the head with a giant hammer, making me sink into the ground. Polina, she was the main character of this play directed by Rumka, and I landed the role of the third wheel. I mumbled hesitantly. Yay. The aftertaste of horrible water I drank down my meds with lingered in my mouth. My thoughts were focused on Polina, but the play where I was assigned the role of a villain was also on my mind. I wandered around the house, feeling intoxicated, and nodded to everything my sister said without trying to discern her words. Oya was talking non-stop, at times lifting her arms up and laughing, only to then suddenly go quiet and give my mom's signature gnarly look. Taking a sip of water. Give me a second. Or I'm gonna fucking choke on it! Alright, we're fine. I was yanked out of the prison of my own mind, where seething thoughts pecked at my brain like harpies, stopping me from coming back to reality. I stared back. Oya looked like a mini version of our mom right now. Well, to be precise, she looked like a person Mom turned into when we moved here, with her intimidating posture and her eyebrows directed towards the ceiling. She tried spitting out those words at me, copying facial expressions of the person she spent almost all her free time with. For a moment, I felt like the light Oya exuded all these years waned and wavered in the wind of prolonged changes. Very soon, my beautiful princess will turn into the dragon that was once guarding her prison tower. That thought was much scarier to me than any other horror sneaking up to me from the future. I looked around the room, my gaze jumping from one object to another like a hungry beast, trying to find anything that could distract Oya. Oya pouted, but there was a spark of interest in her small emerald eyes. The Snow Queen's ice shard inside them started thawing. Actually, wait, do I have that achievement? What are the achievements at? I have 40 out of 43 achievements earned. Interesting. Oya burst out laughing. Her heart was warm once again. I hid Semyon's signet ring in my desk drawer. I was still unsure whether I did the right thing by stealing a crucial piece of evidence for the police. Then I relocated to my sister's room. Little Oya jumped toward the TV set and, after flicking the power switch, started blindingly feeling around the back of the photon, trying to plug the console's cable into the antenna input. Bits of TV shows started flashing on the CRT screen when I armed myself with the remote to look for the channel with the sought-after Dendi signal. It was a mundane question for me. I didn't put any actual meaning behind it. But Oya's expression suddenly changed. She lost all the childish nonchalantness she worked so hard to acquire before. My sister managed to put the cable in its place and started brushing off her dust-covered hand. She was clearly looking for the courage to continue the conversation. Oya went silent, and for a moment I thought I saw tears welling up in her eyes. My sister looked at me with wet eyes. This happened before, but this was a rare occasion. Now that we'd moved to this godforsaken place, Mom's fits rose in frequency. Oya squirmed, looking fearfully out the window. I froze, imagining my little sister so small and unnoticeable standing in the kitchen doorway. She wasn't even trying to hide. Our parents just paid her no mind at all. Oya slightly moved her fist downward, imitating a strike. It was easy to imagine what happened next. The writhing fish with a blade between its fins squirted some foul-smelling musk into Mom's face. Whenever death got this close to my mom, be it when a person was hit by a bus in front of us and their blood was smeared all over the windshield, or when Grandma chopped off a chicken's head and Mom would always get into a weird, dreadful fit. Her eyes would roll over, she would fall on her face like a freshly cut tree and start writhing, just like that agonizing fish, turning over chairs and blurting out bits of scary sentences. Oya shuddered, as if just remembering it pained her. As you two can tell, this is not your regular type of horror. This is fucked up horror. Oya's story made me raise an eyebrow. It seemed like the forest-oozing menace had not only completely consumed our mom, but also infected our strong and courageous dad. I quickly stepped toward Oya and locked her in a tight embrace. She dug her face into my chest and I could feel my shirt becoming wet. Yes, the short answer. I stuttered, unable to justify the actions of our parents. I had ran out of words and all I could do was hug Oya even tighter. Oya screamed and hid behind me. I'm not gonna lie, that did get me ever so slightly. No matter how many times she saw this intro, she would always react the same, just like when she saw that owl. I mean, I almost got goosebumps every time this ghastly face appeared on the screen, so I immediately complied with my sister's request. Finally, the game selection screen showed up for the cartridge that was bundled with the console. Too bad most of the names here were just different levels of the same game. I picked up this gray rectangular controller and started looking around the pixel letters to find the familiar English word for duck. Background music from the menu soothed Oya's mind and she asked in a calm voice, "She's so precious." She's so fucking precious. Oh, I'm not ready for chapter 4 again. I immediately felt uneasy when my new acquaintance was mentioned. I remembered my fight with the delinquents in the forest, and that mysterious whisper from the thicket. I remembered the fleeing Semyon, and the horned giant towering above me, with its outstretched hand. All that time, I could feel Lisa's unseen presence, as if she was watching me from behind the crooked trees, a smile stuck to her ginger mask. I shuddered, chasing away this delusion. I plugged the light gun into the second controller port, listening to my sister's laughs. Player 1, get ready. Isn't this fun? Simply to just tie with her. Fucking bitches. No one saw that. Alright? No one saw that either. Okay, you might... Oh, yeah. I'll end you. She got 4. I need 5 to tie. Okay, I just want to tie with her. Sick. I think we tie, right? Oh, wait, how did I get 500 more? Huh? Sorry, Oya. My mom only managed to get through to me on her 3rd attempt. Oops. I sobered up in an instant and rushed to the hallway. I grabbed the phone, pressed it to my chest, looking at my mom. She shrugged and went into the room, gathering the toys thrown around by Oya as she went. If only she knew how costly this conversation could be for me, what risk I took just answering this call. There were a pen and a shabby notepad lying on the nightstand. I picked them up and started moving the tip of the pen across the paper, producing chaotic doodles that always ended up turning into hearts. Welcome back, our 3rd guest. My pen drew an outline of a girl's face, her eyes, her long eyelashes. Polina spoke in a hushed voice, probably to keep her grandpa from hearing. My pen's tip drafted a house surrounded by tall trees. Into the forest, I thought half-heartedly, to run under the falling snowflakes that make your fur white and the branches that hide you from prying eyes. I realized I was drawing a butterfly knife. I crossed it over. Thinking of Rumka ruined my mood. Should I tell her? Should I warn her about his plans to deduce her? I could throw a wrench into those plans. What about our Voltron team? They may not be best friends, but we're still buddies. What would I become if I betrayed them? Isn't this a decision? I've learned my lesson. Yes, Romka did act horrible from time to time. He was unfair towards others and manipulated the weak. But something told me that friendship wasn't just a word to him. Didn't I wish to make friends in this new place? Even if they were as monstrous as the ancient forest scenery outside my window. I lifted my glasses, rubbed my eyes. The doorbell rang before I could reply. My wandering gaze stumbled upon the door. Romka and Vyasha came to pick me up for the rehearsal, and I was supposed to help them lure away the girl I like. I made a couple of steps and pressed myself into the door. The light bulb hanged on the outside, illuminated the porch, and I could discern two short silhouettes through the frozen peephole. Look what the cat dragged in. I returned to the phone and picked up the handset. My ear vibrated from the buzzing sounds. I lowered the handset on the phone and snuck a peek at the staircase. My mom, engrossed in her favorite TV show, didn't hear the ringer. I put on my shoes and hat without warning anyone and slipped into the dark winter evening. I blinked. Getting used to the twilight, the wind plucked at my cheeks. It carried the cold, resinous smell of coniferous trees from the forest. Freezing air cackled somewhere in the field. Two shadows loomed in front of the gate. I can only recognize them as my classmates because of their height. I walked towards the fence, listening to the howling wind and the squeaking snow. One of the figures moved and slowly glided through the thicket like an ice skater. I slowed down and touched my glasses, trying in vain to adjust my vision to the surrounding darkness. Worry landed on my shoulder like a weightless snowflake. A snake woke up in my belly and started writhing. I felt nauseous. I thought about home, the flimsy fortress behind my back. Mom and Oya were sitting on the second floor of the warm house in front of the TV, watching the adventures of characters in Santa Barbara. I really didn't want to partake in Rumka's plan. And what I wanted even less was going there to the place where a double shadow was wavering in the wind. Yasha's voice was trembling, and the restless Rumka was letting out clouds of steam. He looked deep in thought and in love. I heaved a deep sigh and walked forward, kicking snow piles. Vyasha froze in place, facing the taiga. He was a hand's reach away. I put my numb wrist on his shoulder for some reason, probably to make sure it wasn't a dream. A pointy beak was directed at me, strewn with feathers that formed an owl face. Something wearing a bird mask was staring at me. The voice sounded exactly like Vyasha's, but there was somebody else hiding behind the feathers and the cardboard. I sprinted away as if somebody whipped me. The masked creature only pretended to be Vyasha. They wanted to lure me out. I was running like crazy, drowning in snow. The house in front of me was rapidly growing. The yellow light in its window granted me hope. My mom and sister are there, my salvation. I couldn't hear anything from behind me, as if nobody was chasing me. Maybe it's because the owls can fly. I was already climbing the porch when I noticed another figure. From the soot-black shadow of my house, a scruffy wolf cub crawled out and stood in my way. Its movements were jerky, chaotic, as if it were performing some terrifying dance, or convulsing during a stroke. And even though I could clearly see that the wolf face was a mask, something in this werewolf's convulsions made me freeze in place. The boy in a wolf's costume rubbed his side against the porch post and fell to his knees. He bent his back so hard that I expected his spine to crack. The beast's eyes shone, but he didn't attack. He kept crawling around and running on all fours. I shifted my feet, my mouth agape, trying to keep him in my line of sight. Something was trickling from the slit in the mask. A vicious drops fell to the wooden planks. Saliva. Some unknown force pushed me in the back, whispering me to save myself. The fence was flashing by at the edge of my vision. I was running in another direction this time, towards the toothy edge of the forest that smelled of pine. My heartbeat measured time. The wolf boy growled behind my back as if he'd forgotten his human nature. My right leg got stuck in the snow-laden cavity. I yanked it out, cursing under my breath, and fell to the ground. Plastering snow prevented me from standing up, from propping myself against anything. But my unbound thirst for life helped me get out of that trap. Darkness was creeping closer like the toxic fumes of burial pyres. I ran again, gasping for that air that stung my throat. My hair swayed in the wind. I lost my hat when I fell down, and my ears were now hot from the freezing cold while most of my body was still sweaty. The field finally ended. After realizing that running through the forest was the smartest decision I could make, I dove into the line of trees. I ran without stopping, my face covered with one of my palms. I didn't want to lose an eye to some random branch. Branches whipped my clothes, pricked my skin like butchers that were herding a pig into the grinder. A knot of roots sprouting from the ground grabbed at my foot. I rammed into the scrawny trunk and slid down to its base and looked around in panic. My first desire was to dash toward her and hug her. I resisted and squeezed myself in tighter into the pine. Diva? She was holding the hat I lost. She giggled. I squinted in suspicion and shifted my gaze back and forth between her and the hat, scared that Elisa might be holding a severed head or something even more sinister. But in the end, my hat turned out to be just my hat. I took it and pulled it over my forehead. I didn't reply. Yet. The answer was obvious, but after rolling the thought on my tongue, I mumbled. She walked up to me and grabbed me by the elbow. I sensed the familiar aroma of mint, oranges, and burnt sparklers. I wanted to lean into Alice, to savor, I think they meant Elise, to savor the minute details of her smell. I don't know about you two watching, but I wouldn't. I mean, yes, I would. I would trust the fox spirit from the woods. Either kill me, or I live a new life. There's no cons here. It's all pros. I quickly turned around towards the place the fox girl was pointing to. Kids in masks appeared at the clearing. At least they looked like kids since they were all pretty short. A wolf boy, an owl girl, and a bear boy. They all huffed and gasped for air, clearly tired from running around. I stood there stupefied, my mouth agape and my hands dangling helplessly. I had no idea how to react to the words of these late-night guests, but I managed to squeeze out something resembling a smile. They started looking at each other, and somebody even snorted, as if I said something funny. That's interesting. So we found a mitten. He's wearing that. But also, Semyon is missing his signet ring. And he wore it on that hand. All four of you are fucking turncoats. The wolf boy started wagging his... Can you shut up while I speak? Thank you. The wolf boy started wagging a part of his costume like it was his tail in excitement. You mean when he attacked me in my dream? Eh. I was still unsure if these peculiar little animals had the best intentions in mind, so I hid my hands behind my back, trying to look away from the gaping holes in their carnival masks. Elisa put her hands to her sides in a theatrical manner and somehow managed to wink with her fox face. My smile was no longer fake. You can read human? Aren't you fucking speaking? Eh? And then she sang in a coquettish voice. I butchered that. I let out a cautious laugh. My new acquaintances didn't seem scary anymore. On the contrary, they looked friendly and welcoming. There was something about them that attracted me. Just like this clearing, this moon, and the snowflakes that fell backwards. From the ground to the sky, as if someone was rewinding a tape. The masked kids got close and I felt their touch. They gave me friendly taps, felt my clothes as if checking whether I was real. There was no animalistic malice in their touch, only pure childish curiosity. For some reason, I thought to myself, I can trust them. Snowflakes just kept on floating upwards. The fox gave me a slight tug and burst out laughing. Can I do both? At that moment, Taiga's deceptive silence was broke by the sound of a distant flute. Mesmerizing and alluring, it brought about the ring of crystal glass and the whispers of a fresh winter spring. If I had any doubts before, the flute's song shattered the last of them. I started following my new friend before it can even make a decision. My legs carried me of their own will, and the tunnels made of pine stepped apart. Bushes bowed in front of our procession. Everything looked dreamlike. Because even the clearing we ended up on I only saw in my dream. The flute soared in the treetops like some fantastical bird. The snowflakes floated up in a spiral. The moon painted tree branches with silver. Elisa gasped in amazement. I was also in awe. I tilted my head backwards as far as I could go. Did I double tap? Did fuckhead say something? Oh no, he just appeared, okay. Wolfie howled in agreement. I wanted to see what the fox girl saw in her eyes, hidden in the semi-dark of her cape. Now I didn't feel weird about these masked kids. I felt weird for being the only one without a mask. I felt like I was naked in the January winds. I was trembling, but I wasn't scared. My trembling wasn't caused by the cold. It originated from the peculiar anxiousness, the anticipation of something amazing. I touched my cold cheek. I looked at the mask the fox was holding out to me. The bunny mask that looked like a silver ingot under the moonlight. I was curious to see the world through its silks. Suddenly, finding its way through the flute's melody, a thought came to me. The glasses they found were in Simeon's possession. My new acquaintances must have known what happened to him. Or even worse. The bear and the owl looked at each other. The wolf boy curled into a ball and the fox lowered the pointy nose of her mask. An adult. Yeah? I felt that one. Yeah, can we liven this up a little bit? Because even I'm getting fucking depressed here. I was lost in thought, staring at the pines, trying to pinpoint the location of the flute. I was sure that the person who played it was standing right behind the piney stockade. Someone tall, going over the holes in the flute with their long fingers. The fox girl took out a handful of candy from her pocket and handed them to each of the kids. Covers shuffled, the smell of pineapple, coca, and melon wafted through the air. I don't like the way you put your finger in his mouth. The last treat, a chocolate-covered waffle candy, Elisa put right into my mouth. I don't like this imagery. My tongue was engulfed in spiciness. I felt like my body was covered in fur and small sparks were running along it. I chewed on the waffle and the chocolate, gulped them down, enjoying the vivid taste. Spasiba! My gratitude was barely audible because my lips were already touching the insides of the mask. I didn't even notice how I put it against my face. The paper mache was warm, the mask stuck to my skin, giving it a nice prickle. Anyway. The kind when you dive into a hot bath after being outside in the winter, when you lie there and purr from the soapy water. Whoops. Sorry, Owly. Oh, the owl just didn't fucking say anything. The melody kept swirling in the field like a hurricane. I couldn't wait to release the energy, the heat that this enchanting music was filling me with. The owl jumped and disappeared into the sky. I heard her laughter from somewhere above, and then she landed back, huffing and sighing. I followed suit. My feet tore off the ground. I flew towards the stars like a rocket and screamed from happiness after seeing my friends down below. We're in color now! The wind helped me fly. It felt like I was jumping on a huge trampoline. The stars looked like vivid sparkles that I could reach and lick. The moon also got closer, and then I plunged. I got scared that I'd break my legs for a moment, but my soles landed softly on the ground and I regained my balance. In a fit of merry laughter, I realized the most important thing: these four are not a threat. My real enemies, I felt that with every single hair on my mask, were those who knew nothing about magic. Humans from the village. Very beautiful. I also realized how alive my surroundings had become. I heard the dry grass under the snow moan. I saw faces of the trees and the stars. The trees were smirking and the stars were grimacing in fear. That's right, be scared. I jumped up to you and I snapped my teeth, then let out a jubilant laugh, jumping up along with the fox. We flew higher than the tallest pines and stayed in the air. I swirled, Elisa following my rhythm. I knew that she was smiling, so I smiled too. And the flute just kept on playing, carrying us higher and higher. Hey, got your head in the clouds again? Oh, I'm fucking stupid. I don't know why my brain shut off. Not with you around, I thought, trying to unglue my chin from the desk. My muscles felt slightly sore, but that feeling was pleasant. The whole class was wandering about for some reason, whispering and passing notes to each other. Their faces looked like discolored masks to me, bleak and boring. I yawned, remembering the time I was soaring high above the forest, with Elisa by my side laughing and squeezing my hand. Perhaps? No, probably it was all just a dream. Because I didn't walk back from the forest, I just woke up in my bed on a normal morning with tea and medicine. Still, I was hardly worried about trying to find a rational explanation for my night dance. That feeling of flight was much more important. The knowledge of how it feels to be hanging in the air above the treetops of majestic pines and baring my teeth at the moon. My sleepiness was gone in an instant. I frowned in suspicion. She won't be missed. And that does it for this episode, chapter, however you want to say it. I do hope you two enjoyed, the two of you watching. If you enjoyed this and you want to see episode 4, regardless if you do or not, I'm still going to play it. I just hope you two enjoyed. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Genuinely though, like, I don't know how long you two are watching for, but thank you once again. Truly, for listening to my annoying ass voice, stutter, and mispronounce words. I hope you two enjoyed. I hope, and to whoever else watches this after the fact, I hope you enjoyed as well. Until next time, peace.